Greetings, this is Carl from the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, and this is a quick tech tip. Today we're going to look at using the presentation tools available in Poll Everywhere that'll make using the slides in your classroom, whether you're presenting them from the website or in PowerPoint or some other presentation tool, more effective and perhaps more engaging for the students. Where we're going to start today is when you're actually creating or editing your questions. Now I've created 3 questions here for today's presentation, and the first one we're going to look at is a multiple choice question. So I'm going to click on that and open it up, and you're going to see this editing page that you're familiar with from some of our other videos. Now the first one I want to take a look at is up here at the top. It's called Visual Settings. Now here there are a host of tools to change the direction of your bars, what kind of chart comes up, that sort of thing. But primarily I want to look at the one at the bottom here called Total Results. If you click on that and open it up, you'll see that it'll give you some options to show on your chart and on your polls the total number of responses that have come into the classroom. And this is the default setting. So I'm going to click this box here so it'll actually show it on my polls as my answers come in. And this can be helpful in a couple of different ways. You'll be able to see the total number of responses that your students have sent into the Poll Everywhere question. This will help you gauge whether most have engaged in the practice. If you have a class of 25 and you see 10 questions come in, you may want to encourage or reach out to the class to see if there's any clarification or something that you could offer, and somehow try to engage some additional responses. Once you get up to that closer number, then you'll be able to see that the class is fully engaged. And what we'll do is we'll save that. And you can see right down here, in this mode it's a little tricky, but right down here at the bottom, you can see that total responses is now showing there. Over here on the left-hand kind, you can see that you could introduce a timer. Now, when your slide came up in your presentation mode, this timer would activate. You could set any time you wanted to in here. And then while you're actually presenting over here, you would have some pause features available. Now this is great if you're doing a contest or question and you really want to make it tight and succinct, but I'm not sure if it's effective for everybody. What it would take away from you is that ability to sort of engage, sort of get a feel for how the classroom is, and then you can sort of gauge the amount of time that you want to give the students, maybe give them a few more seconds if you think that'll be beneficial, or take away for a few answers if a lot of answers come in quickly and easily. Now, this is another button that's kind of important. You can see this particular question has a right answer. And what you may have noticed when you've used these in classes in the past is the slide goes up, people look at the answers, you start to see a few wrong answers come in, and then all of a sudden this right answer bar may be increasing in size, and then those wrong answers sort of disappear and people jump on board with the right answer. So you don't get a real good gauge of what the actual knowledge base is of the question in the room. So one thing that you can do is unclick this show responses, and as you can see down here, these sort of turn into the gray bars. So when this question comes up in your presentation now, those will be barred out. Students will respond to it. You'll be able to see the total number of responses that are coming in. And then once you're done, you can show those responses and see what question. And we'll talk about that when we get into the slideshow and presentation mode. I'm going to go to my next question here. And this is a word cloud answer. So whatever students put in here, it's not necessarily important to know what total responses are. And this is a little bit more fun and effective if those words are coming in, they're changing size, they're changing shape as they come in, so that visual sort of creates something exciting around it. And right or wrong answers aren't necessarily particular. Again, if you wanted to block that so people's answers didn't influence the rest of the room, so everybody chose pizza, then that's your prerogative, and you could again just show that result, click that show that responses button, and this would be the slide that came up as the answers come in. But I think we'll keep that one open in this particular response. The next type of question is an open-ended question, and here students can put in questions. This is a great, works at the end of class, maybe the last 5-10 minutes of class. You could leave a question, what questions you have about today's material. Maybe there's a point they don't understand, something they're a little foggy about. They could answer those questions, and then as students would see on their own, whether they're working from the browser or working from a device with the application on, the other students' questions would come up on that. and they would be able to rank, give them an upvote or a downvote accordingly if it's a question they shared as well. So it's kind of a neat tool. So let's take a look and see what these look like inside PowerPoint. Now, as I'm getting ready to open up PowerPoint on my computer, I want to check a couple of things. First, I want to go to the Poll Everywhere tab. Now, if you're notice that your PowerPoint does not have a Poll Everywhere tab, if you're working on a PC, and a Mac it's slightly different. But if it And just a quick side note here with the difference between PC and Mac. Remember, in Mac, you want to make sure you go to your Applications folder and open up your Poll Everywhere application. And in there, you can enter your username and your password and go ahead and log in. And you'll be ready to present on your Mac. We'll go back to the other tape now. And here we are, we've opened up our PowerPoint with our questions inserted. Now on a PC, you want to make sure that that Poll Everywhere tab exists. What that's telling you is that the appropriate drivers have been loaded on this particular computer to make Poll Everywhere function. If you're using your own laptop and you've built things in the past, you probably won't have any problem. If you're using a classroom computer and you don't see this Poll Everywhere tab, that's to let you know that the Poll Everywhere drivers haven't been loaded on it and your Poll Everywhere slides are not going to work in it. Then you want to check and make sure you are signed in here. Make sure it doesn't say log in, but your username. This lets you know that PowerPoint is set up to work with your questions. And we're going to go from the beginning of our slideshow. And this often happens as a classroom. As we're plugged into a device or we're using a classroom computer, it may go into this presentation mode default. Now, if you need your notes for and prefer to use the presentation mode, be wary. I have seen Poll Everywhere get a little bit glitchy in this presentation mode. If you don't have any notes, I would recommend that you change your display settings, and that is simply done by moving up here to the top of the screen, dropping this menu down, and duplicating your slideshow. The view you see on your computer will be exactly the same as the view that you see on the presentation device, whether it be a projector or LCD in the classroom. If you do need those notes and do need that presenter mode, I would suggest maybe switching back and forth between your Poll Everywhere and presenting your questions from Poll Everywhere browser dashboard, and then continuing with your PowerPoint presentation as you normally would. So we're going to go to our first question. Okay, and you can see here, since we set that setting up ahead of time, our questions come up and you don't see the bars as students are putting in answers and so forth. So, you can see right down here, we've gotten a response, and since I'm the only one responding at this point, that total response is. That lets me know how many students have responded, how many questions came up, and then I look up here and I can see that the poll is active because that is blue, so people are able to respond. And then once I've given the appropriate amount of time to have students answer that question and make sure I've got most of my classroom answered on that question, I can lock it. And then once I've locked it, I can show the responses. And I can see the number of students that have answered the question. And then, if I've checked the correct answer when I created the question, I could then show that correct answer and students would know who had not gotten it correct. Now here we were with our first question. That was a word cloud. And again, we wanted these responses to come in so students could see those changes. So that's kind of fun. As those answers come in, the words change, and that offers a nice visual for whatever that question would be. Then our next question, and here they can answer a response. Now I'm not going to type a real question. I'm just going to use some words here for speed and ease. And you can open this up so students could answer or put in as many questions as they wanted. And you can see right now there are no votes. But on a student's device, they're able to uptick or downtick a particular question. And you can see those responses change live. Now you may get enough questions where this screen fills up, and then what you'd be able to do is show the newest answers as they come up. And those questions would constantly change change ranking if more were downvoted and others were upvoted and that sort of thing, and they would sort of change ranking, as you can see there. So it's kind of a fun tool to get that idea of what questions may be available, and then you could bring those questions up or answer those questions, and perhaps creating a video that students are able to watch in between classes, sending out an email with the corrections about any misunderstandings, or at the beginning of the next class is something you could cover. And one point I just wanted to make sure was clear, that these buttons are always available when you're presenting in PowerPoint or from the Poll Everywhere website. So if your question comes up and the bars are showing, just quickly move up to the right, click on the Show Responses button, those gray bars will come up and you can proceed like we did in the video. That's just a few ideas that might make these tools a little bit easier to use in your classroom. If you have any questions or want to deep dive into these any further and talk about how they work in your particular PowerPoint or for your particular presentation, feel free to reach out to me at CETL@une.edu. Be well and have a great day.